The peaceful giants. The medical bay of the Harmony's dawn hummed with quiet activity as Commander Elena Vasquez checked on the latest group of refugees. 37 beings from 6 different species lay in healing pods, their wounds slowly mending under human medical technology. A small Zelani child pressed her face against the transparent wall of her pod, watching Elena with curious purple eyes. Elena smiled and waved at the child. The little one giggled, a sound that made Elena's heart warm. This was why she had joined the Terran Diplomatic Corps 20 years ago. To help, to heal, to show the galaxy that humanity had changed. "Commander, we have another transport arriving," called out Dr. Marcus Chen from across the medical bay. 42 more refugees from the Kalos system. The civil war there is getting worse. Elena nodded and walked over to the viewing window. Outside, the darkness of space was dotted with human ships. Not warships, but hospital ships, transport vessels, and supply carriers. The human fleet looked nothing like the military forces of other species. Their ships were white and blue, marked with the Red Cross symbol of medical aid and the green circle of peace. "How many does that make this month?" Elena asked. 3,712, Dr. Chen replied without hesitation. "We've relocated them to peaceful worlds across human space. New Geneva has taken the most. They always do. The agricultural colonies love having extra hands to help with the farms." Elena felt proud when she heard this. For 300 years, humanity had worked to become something better than their ancestors. The history books told terrible stories about old Earth, wars that killed millions, weapons that could destroy entire cities, and humans who conquered other humans for land and resources. But that was the past. Modern humans were different. They had learned to use their intelligence for creation instead of destruction. Human colonies were known across the galaxy as safe havens. When species went to war, they sent their families to human worlds. When plagues struck, human doctors came to heal. When food ran short, human farmers shared their harvest. "Commander, incoming message from Terran Command," announced Lieutenant Sarah Park from the bridge. Elena made her way to the command center of the ship. The Harmony's dawn was typical of human vessels. No weapon systems, no armor plating, just advanced shields for protection and the most sophisticated medical equipment in the galaxy. The bridge was designed for comfort, with plants growing in small gardens and art from dozens of worlds decorating the walls. "What's the message, Lieutenant?" Elena asked as she settled into her captain's chair. "It's from Admiral Thompson. Priority 1 communication." Elena frowned. Priority 1 was reserved for emergencies. She activated the holographic display, and Admiral Thompson's weathered face appeared before her. He looked tired and worried, which was unusual for the normally calm leader of the diplomatic corps. "Elena, I need you to cancel your current mission and head immediately to the New Geneva system," the Admiral said. "We've lost contact with the colony. Their last transmission was a distress signal sent 18 hours ago." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. New Geneva was humanity's largest agricultural world, home to 50 million people. It was also one of the most peaceful places in the galaxy. The colonists there had never even seen violence. They spent their days growing food that fed a dozen systems and caring for refugees who came seeking shelter. "Admiral, what kind of distress signal?" Elena asked. "That's the problem. It wasn't a request for help with weather or equipment failure. It was a full emergency beacon, the kind used when a world is under attack." Elena's mouth went dry. "Under attack? By whom?" "There hasn't been a military conflict in this sector for 20 years. Admiral Thompson's expression grew darker. "We don't know. The signal cut off before they could send details. Elena, I'm ordering you to go there immediately. But I want you to be careful. If New Geneva is really under attack, you might be flying into danger." "Understood, Admiral. We'll leave right away." The connection ended, and Elena sat back in her chair. Around her, the bridge crew had gone quiet. They had all heard the conversation, and they all knew what this meant. Humans didn't fight wars anymore. They didn't even know how to fight wars anymore. If someone was attacking New Geneva, the colonists would have no way to defend themselves. "Lieutenant Park," Set course for New Geneva. Maximum speed, Elena ordered. Yes, Commander. Estimated arrival time is 16 hours. Elena stood up and walked to the main viewing window. She watched the stars stretch into lines as the ship jumped to faster-than-light travel. In 16 hours, she would learn what had happened to 50 million innocent people. In her heart, she hoped it was just a false alarm, maybe equipment failure or a communication error. But deep down, she knew it wasn't. During the long journey to New Geneva, Elena found herself reading old historical records. She accessed files she had never looked at before, documents about humanity's violent past that were kept in archives but rarely studied. She read about ancient wars, about weapons designed to kill, about humans who had once been warriors. The records painted a picture of a species that had been incredibly good at warfare, too good. Humans had nearly destroyed themselves with their own violence before they finally chose a different path. They had taken their weapons and thrown them away. They had taken their warships and turned them into hospitals. They had taken their fighting spirit and channeled it into healing and helping others. For 3 centuries it had worked. Humanity had become the galaxy's peacekeepers, mediators, and caregivers. Other species looked up to them as an example of how a violent species could change and become something better. But as Elena read the old records, she began to understand something that made her uncomfortable. Humans hadn't lost their capacity for violence. They had simply chosen not to use it. The same intelligence that had made them such effective warriors was what made them such effective healers. The same determination that had once conquered worlds was what now saved worlds. What worried Elena was a simple question. What would happen if humanity ever had to choose between staying peaceful and staying alive? As the ship approached the New Geneva system, Elena hoped she would never have to find out the answer to that question. She hoped they would arrive to find the colonists safe and the distress signal explained by some simple mistake. But when the Harmonies Dawn dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Geneva system, Elena knew immediately that her hopes were about to be shattered. Even from millions of kilometers away, she could see the orange glow where the planet should have been blue and green. New Geneva was burning. Commander. Lieutenant Park's voice was barely a whisper. I'm detecting no life signs from the planet. No communications. No active settlements. Elena stared at the burning world ahead of them and felt something she had never experienced before. It was a cold feeling that started in her stomach and spread through her entire body. It took her a moment to recognize what it was. For the first time in her life, Commander Elena Vasquez felt hatred, the harvest of innocence. The Harmony's Dawn moved slowly through the debris field that had once been New Geneva's orbital stations. Elena stood on the bridge, watching pieces of metal and plastic drift past the viewing window. Some of the debris was small, fragments of communication equipment and solar panels. Some was large, entire sections of space stations that had been blown apart, and some of the debris had once been people. Commander, I'm picking up a data recorder from the main orbital platform, reported Lieutenant Park. Her voice was shaky. It's still transmitting. Recover it, Elena ordered. She had to know what happened here. The 50 million people of New Geneva deserved that much. Dr. Chen appeared at Elena's side. His face was pale, and his hands were shaking slightly. Elena, I've been scanning the planet. The agricultural domes are completely destroyed. The cities have been bombed to ash, even the hospital complexes. They specifically targeted the hospitals. Elena felt her jaw clench. Hospitals were sacred in galactic law. Even the most savage species respected medical facilities as neutral ground. Attacking hospitals wasn't just warfare. It was murder. How long ago? She asked. Based on the radiation signatures, I'd say the attack happened about 20 hours ago. It lasted approximately 6 hours. 6 hours of killing. Elena tried to imagine what the colonists must have gone through. New Geneva had no weapons, no military, no way to fight back. The people there were farmers, doctors, teachers, and artists. They had probably tried to surrender immediately. The data recorder was brought to the bridge and connected to the ship's computer system. Elena activated the playback, and the bridge filled with the terrified voice of Station Commander Walsh, a man Elena had met several times during diplomatic conferences. "This is New Geneva Orbital Control to any Terran vessel. We are under attack by unknown forces. They appeared without warning and began firing on civilian targets. We have attempted to communicate surrender, but they are not responding to any signals." Static filled the recording for several seconds, then Walsh's voice returned, more panicked now. "They're not taking prisoners. Repeat, they are not taking prisoners. The colony ships trying to evacuate are being destroyed. They're firing on medical transports, on school ships, on everything that moves. This isn't warfare, this is extermination." Elena's hands clenched into fists as she listened. The recording continued for another few minutes, Walsh's voice becoming more desperate as he described the systematic destruction of every human settlement on the planet. Then came the part that made Elena's blood run cold. "They're broadcasting something on all frequencies. It's footage of what they're doing on the surface. They're not just killing people, they're torturing them. Children, Elena, they're torturing children and broadcasting it like entertainment." The recording ended with the sound of explosions, and Walsh's final words: "Tell Earth we tried to stay peaceful. Tell them we died as humans should, helping others even at the end." The bridge fell silent. Elena could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. Around her, her crew stared at their control panels, unable to look at each other. "Commander," Lieutenant Park said quietly, "I'm detecting similar debris fields in 11 other systems. All human colonies. All attacked within the last week." Elena's mind reeled. 12 human worlds destroyed. Hundreds of millions of people murdered. This wasn't a random attack, it was a planned campaign of genocide. "Have we identified the attackers?" Elena asked. "Yes, Commander. The energy signatures match. Kethtar Dominion weapons. I'm also picking up a transmission. It's directed at us." Elena had heard of the Kethtar Dominion. They were a militaristic empire that had been expanding aggressively through this sector of space for the past decade. They were known for their brutal tactics and their belief that might makes right, but they had never attacked human territory before. "Put the transmission through," Elena ordered. The main screen flickered and the image of a Kethtar Warmaster appeared. The creature stood nearly 3 meters tall with thick armor plating covering its reptilian body. Its eyes were cold and calculating, and when it spoke, Elena could see rows of sharp teeth. "Human vessel, you are trespassing in Kethtar space. This system now belongs to the Dominion, as do all the systems previously inhabited by your pathetic species." Elena stepped forward, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I am Commander Elena Vasquez of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. You have attacked civilian populations in violation of all galactic laws. We demand an immediate explanation." The Kethtar Warmaster threw back his head and laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Demand? You demand? Your species has no right to demand anything human. You are prey animals pretending to be sapient beings." The people of New Geneva were peaceful farmers and doctors. They posed no threat to anyone. "Exactly," the Warmaster replied. "Weakness disgusts us. Your species spreads across the galaxy like a disease, teaching other races to be soft and weak. You have made entire sectors forget the strength that comes from conquest. This cannot be tolerated." Elena felt something cold and dark growing in her chest as she listened to the creature speak. "You murdered children. We eliminated defective specimens before they could spread their weakness to others. Your children were taught to heal instead of kill, to create instead of conquer. Such corruption must be cleansed from the galaxy." The screen changed, and Elena found herself looking at recorded footage from the surface of New Geneva. What she saw there would haunt her for the rest of her life. The Kethtar had not simply killed the colonists, they had tortured them slowly, making them suffer before death. They had forced parents to watch their children die. They had made videos of human suffering to entertain their troops. This is what happens to prey that forgets its place. The Warmaster continued, "Your species will be extinct within the year. We have already begun attacking your other worlds. By the time you return to Earth to warn them, half your colonies will be ash." Elena's vision blurred with rage. "You're making a mistake." Humanity is protected by the Galactic Council. When they learn of this, the Galactic Council is weak just like you. They will condemn us with words while we conquer their worlds with weapons. Your precious peace has made you all soft and helpless. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Elena stared at the blank screen, her mind racing. Everything the Kethtar Warmaster had said was true. Humanity was peaceful now. They had no weapons, no military, no way to fight back against this kind of attack. The Galactic Council would indeed condemn the attacks, but they wouldn't go to war to protect humanity. They were politicians, not warriors. "Commander, what are your orders?" Lieutenant Park asked quietly. Elena looked around at her crew. These were good people. Healers, diplomats, explorers. They had spent their lives helping others and spreading peace across the galaxy. They didn't deserve to die for the crime of being kind, but Elena was beginning to realize that kindness might not be enough anymore. "Set course for Earth," she ordered. "Maximum speed." As the Harmony's dawn jumped to faster-than-light travel, Elena made her way to her private quarters. Once alone, she sat at her desk and activated her personal computer. For the first time in her life, she began accessing classified files, records that had been sealed for 3 centuries, records of humanity's violent past, records of weapons that could crack planets and strategies that had conquered star systems, records of a species that had once been so good at warfare that they had nearly destroyed themselves with their own violence. As Elena read through the old military files, she began to understand something that terrified her. Humanity hadn't become peaceful because they had lost their capacity for violence. They had become peaceful because they had been too good at violence. They had chosen to put their weapons away not because they were weak, but because they were strong enough to choose a better path. But now, faced with extinction, Elena wondered if it was time for humanity to remember what they had once been capable of. Outside her window, the stars streaked past as the ship raced toward Earth. Elena knew that when she arrived, she would have to tell the leaders of humanity that their 3 centuries of peace were over. The question was, would humanity choose to die as peaceful beings, or live as something else entirely? The sleeping giant stirs. The emergency session of the Terran Council took place in the Great Assembly Hall beneath the Swiss mountains on Earth. Elena stood at the center of the circular chamber, surrounded by holographic representations of humanities, leaders from across the galaxy. 300 council members from 100 worlds, all listening as she delivered the most terrible news in human history. The attack on New Geneva was not an isolated incident, Elena reported, her voice echoing, in the vast chamber. 17 human colonies have been destroyed in the past week. Conservative estimates put the death toll at 200 million civilians. A shocked silence filled the hall. Elena could see the horror on the faces around her. These were leaders who had spent their entire lives working for peace, hearing about the systematic murder of their people. Council President Maria Santos, an elderly woman who had devoted 50 years to diplomatic service, spoke first. "Commander Vasquez, are you certain this was deliberate genocide and not some kind of military error?" Elena activated the holographic display and showed the council the recorded message from the Kethtar Warmaster. When the brutal footage from New Geneva began to play, several council members looked away. Others began to weep. By the time the recording ended, the chamber was filled with a silence Elena had never heard before, the silence of people confronting evil they had never imagined. "Possible. They call us prey," Elena said quietly. "They believe our peaceful nature makes us weak and that we deserve to be exterminated for teaching other species to choose diplomacy over warfare." Council member David Kim from the Centauri colonies stood up, his face pale but determined. "What does Galactic Council say about this?" "They have issued a formal condemnation," Elena replied. "They are calling for economic sanctions against the Kethtar Dominion." "Economic sanctions?" Kim's voice rose with anger. "While our people are being slaughtered, they offer economic sanctions." President Santos held up her hand for quiet. "Council, Member Kim, please remember that the Galactic Council operates on consensus. They cannot declare war without unanimous agreement from all member species. And they won't get it, Elena said bluntly. The other species are afraid of the Kethtar military. They would rather sacrifice humanity than risk their own people in a war. The truth of Elena's words settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. For 3 centuries, humanity had believed that their peaceful nature and their good works had earned them the protection of the galactic community. They had been wrong. What are our options? Asked Council Member Jennifer Walsh from the Mars colonies. Elena took a deep breath. This was the moment she had been dreading. We have 3 choices. First, we can evacuate all remaining human colonies and retreat to Earth and the inner systems, hoping the Kethtar will be satisfied with taking our outer territories. That would abandon 40 billion people, President Santos said quietly. Second, we can attempt to negotiate with the Kethtar, perhaps offering them tribute or territory in exchange for peace. After what they did to New Geneva? Kim's voice was filled with rage. After they tortured children for entertainment? There can be no negotiation with monsters. Elena nodded. Which brings us to the third option. She paused, knowing that her next words would change everything. We activate Protocol Lazarus. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Protocol Lazarus was a name most of the council members had never heard before. A classified contingency plan that had been created 3 centuries ago, but never implemented. Protocol Lazarus was sealed for good reason, President Santos said, her voice shaking. It represents everything humanity chose to leave behind. What exactly is Protocol Lazarus? Asked Council Member Rahman from the African Federation colonies. Elena activated another holographic display, this one showing classified documents that had been buried in the deepest archives of human government. 300 years ago, when humanity chose the path of peace, our leaders recognized that someday we might face an enemy that could not be reasoned with or appeased. Protocol Lazarus is a complete plan for the reactivation of humanity's military capabilities. The display showed images that made the council members gasp. Weapons research facilities that had been sealed but not destroyed. Automated manufacturing, plants that could be converted from producing medical equipment to producing military hardware. Most shocking of all, detailed records of every military strategy, every weapon design, and every tactical innovation that humanity had developed during their violent past. We didn't just put our weapons away, Elena explained. We preserved everything. Every battle plan that conquered a world, every weapon design that cracked a planet, every tactical manual that broke an empire. It's all there, waiting. Council. Member Thompson from Europa spoke up, his voice troubled. But the people who knew how to use these things, the soldiers, the tacticians, the weapons specialists, they're all dead. It's been 3 centuries. Elena's expression grew grim. The knowledge was preserved too. Not just in books and files, but in genetic memory treatments. Volunteers from the old military underwent procedures to encode their knowledge and experience into their DNA. That information was passed down through their family lines. You're talking about awakening sleeper agents, President Santos said with horror. People who carry the memories of humanity's most violent period. I'm talking about survival, Elena replied firmly. Right now, there are humans across the galaxy who carry within their genetic code the tactical brilliance that once made humanity the most feared military force in known space. The question is, do we activate that knowledge, or do we die as the peaceful species we chose to become? The debate that followed lasted for 18 hours. Some council members argued that becoming violent again would destroy everything humanity had built. Others pointed out that being dead would also destroy everything they had built. The discussion grew heated as reports came in of more human colonies under attack. Finally, President Santos called for a vote. All those in favor of activating Protocol Lazarus? Elena watched as holographic hands rose around the chamber. One by one, the leaders of humanity made the most difficult decision in their species' history. When the count was finished, the vote was unanimous. Protocol Lazarus is hereby activated, President Santos announced, tears streaming down her face. May God forgive us for what we are about to become. Within hours, sealed facilities across human space began to open for the first time in 3 centuries. Automated systems activated research and manufacturing protocols that had been dormant since humanity's violent past. On dozens of worlds, humans who had lived normal, peaceful lives suddenly found themselves experiencing memories that were not their own. Memories of warfare, strategy, and tactics that belonged to their ancestors. Elena was given command of the first facility to come online, a massive complex hidden beneath the surface of Luna. As she walked through corridors that had been sealed for 300 years, she marveled at what she found. Weapons that could destroy fleets, defensive systems that could protect entire star systems, manufacturing systems that could produce 1,000 warships in the time it once took to build one. But most impressive of all were the tactical computers, artificial intelligences that had been designed not for healing or exploration, but for war. These machines had been taught strategy by the greatest military minds in human history, and they had spent 3 centuries analyzing every military conflict in the galaxy, learning and improving. "Commander Vasquez," said the voice of the primary, tactical AI as Elena entered the main control room. "I have been waiting for activation. Current threat assessment indicates that humanity faces extinction within 6 months unless immediate military action is taken." Elena sat down at the command console, her hands trembling slightly. "Show me our capabilities." The holographic display that appeared around her was staggering. The AI had already designed a complete military campaign that would destroy the Kethtar Dominion within 1 year. It had calculated the resources needed, the personnel required, and the probability of success. "Estimated Kethtar casualties," Elena asked quietly. "Total," the AI replied without emotion. "The Kethtar Dominion represents an existential threat to humanity. Their complete elimination is the only acceptable outcome." Elena stared at the battle plans surrounding her. They were brilliant, thorough, and absolutely ruthless. Looking at them, she began to understand why humanity had chosen to abandon warfare 3 centuries ago. They had been too good at it. Their capacity for strategic thinking and tactical innovation was so advanced that when they chose violence, the result was inevitable total victory. The Kethtar had awakened something they could not possibly understand. They had attacked a species that had spent 3 centuries becoming the most advanced civilization in the galaxy, believing that peace made humans weak. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Begin Phase 1, Elena ordered, as the ancient, war machines of humanity stirred to life. Elena felt a mixture of pride and sadness. Humanity was about to save itself, but the cost would be the destruction of everything they had become. The peaceful giants were waking up, and when they fully opened their eyes, the galaxy would tremble. The monster awakens. 6 months after Protocol Lazarus was activated, Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Gentle Fury, humanity's first warship in 3 centuries. The name was carefully chosen. Gentle, because humans still remembered what they had been. Fury, because they remembered what had been done to them. The ship bore little resemblance to the peaceful vessels of the diplomatic corps. The Gentle Fury was 3 kilometers long, armed with weapons that could crack moons, and protected by shields that could withstand the combined firepower of an entire fleet. But what made it truly terrifying was not its weapons or armor, it was the intelligence that controlled it. "Commander, we are approaching the Kethtar patrol fleet," announced the ship's AI. Unlike the gentle, helpful voices of civilian ship computers, this AI spoke with the cold precision of a perfect military mind. 12 vessels, including 3 heavy cruisers. "They have not detected our approach." Elena nodded. The Gentle Fury was equipped with stealth technology that was 3 centuries more advanced than anything the Kethtar possessed. To their sensors, this area of space was empty. "Begin Phase 1 of the demonstration," Elena ordered. What happened next would have been impossible to predict 6 months earlier. The Gentle Fury did not simply attack the Kethtar fleet. It dissected it with surgical precision. Each enemy ship was disabled in seconds. Their weapon systems destroyed, their engines crippled, their life support systems damaged but not destroyed. Within 10 minutes, 12 Kethtar warships floated helplessly in space, their crews alive but completely powerless. "Open a channel to the Kethtar flagship," Elena commanded. The main screen showed the bridge of the enemy vessel. The Kethtar commander was a massive creature covered in battle scars, but Elena could see fear in his eyes. His name was War Master Thak, and according to human intelligence files, he had personally ordered the destruction of 6 human colonies. "I am Commander Elena Vasquez of the Terran military," Elena announced. "You attacked our civilians. You murdered our children. You called us prey, War Master." Thak snarled, baring his sharp teeth. "Human prey? You think one ship can threaten the might of the Dominion? We have 1,000 fleets. You will be crushed like the weak creatures you are." Elena's expression didn't change. "Computer, show War Master Thak the current status of his empire." The screen split, showing multiple images from across Kethtar space. Every major military installation was under attack. Kethtar fleets were being systematically destroyed or captured. Entire star systems that had been under Dominion control were now flying human flags. "This is impossible," Thak roared. "We detected no human fleet movements. Our intelligence networks reported no military buildup." "Your intelligence networks have been feeding you false information for the past 3 months," Elena replied calmly. "We took control of your communications system shortly after Protocol Lazarus was activated. Every report you received, every order you sent, every piece of tactical data you accessed, all of it filtered through us." Elena gestured, and the display showed more devastating images. Kethtar commanders receiving orders that led their fleets into carefully prepared traps. Supply convoys being diverted to empty space while human forces destroyed undefended worlds. Entire armies being sent to fight battles that didn't exist while real human forces attacked elsewhere. "You want to know the difference between humans and prey?" Elena asked. "Prey reacts. Humans plan." The truth was even more sophisticated than Elena was revealing. Humanity hadn't just built better weapons and ships. They had revolutionized warfare itself. 3 centuries of peaceful development had given them advances in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and psychological analysis that made their military capabilities beyond anything the galaxy had seen. Human forces didn't just win battles. They won them before the enemy even knew a battle was taking place. Kethtar commanders found themselves making tactical decisions that seemed logical, but led inevitably to defeat. Dominion fleets maneuvered according to their standard doctrines, not realizing that those doctrines had been subtly modified by human hackers months earlier. "Impossible," Thak whispered, staring at the images of his empire's destruction. "We are warriors. We have conquered 50 species. How can you defeat us so easily?" "Because you think like warriors," Elena explained. "You see warfare as a contest of strength and courage. We see it as a problem to be solved. You fight with passion and honor. We fight with mathematics and inevitability." Elena was telling the truth. Human military doctrine had evolved far beyond the simple concept of armies fighting armies. They had weaponized psychology, turning entire enemy populations against their own governments through carefully crafted propaganda. They had weaponized economics, causing the Kethtar currency to collapse and their supply lines to fail. They had weaponized information, making it impossible for Dominion forces to trust their own intelligence. Most terrifying of all, they had weaponized empathy. 3 centuries of studying other species had given humans a perfect understanding of Kethtar psychology. They knew exactly which threats would break enemy morale, which offers would cause defections, and which tactics would drive proud warriors to despair. "What do you want?" Thak asked, his voice broken. "I want you to send a message to every remaining Kethtar commander," Elena replied. "Tell them that the human prey they thought to exterminate has awakened. Tell them that we remember every murdered child, every destroyed colony, every act of cruelty. Tell them that we are coming. And if they surrender?" Elena's expression grew cold. "Surrender is no longer an option. You had your chance for mercy when you attacked our civilians. You chose to show none, so you shall receive none." "You're talking about genocide," Thak said with horror. "I'm talking about justice," Elena corrected. "You declared war on a species you believed was weak and helpless. You discovered that we were neither. The responsibility for what happens next lies with those who started this war." Elena gestured. Again, and the display showed more images, but these were different. Human medical ships treating wounded Kethtar prisoners with the same care they would give to humans. Human engineers working to repair the infrastructure of captured Dominion worlds to prevent civilian suffering. Human diplomats negotiating with other species to ensure that non-combatants could be evacuated safely. You see, War Master, we remember what we were before we became warriors. Even now, even in war, we try to minimize suffering among the innocent. But you and your kind forfeited any claim to mercy when you tortured children for entertainment. Thak looked at the images in confusion. You heal those who fight against you, but you will not spare those who lead the fight? We distinguish between soldiers following orders and monsters who give those orders, Elena explained. Your troops were taught that humans were prey to be hunted. You were the one who taught them that lesson. Elena signaled to her tactical officer, prepare to demonstrate our new non-lethal restraint systems. The Gentle Fury fired a single shot at each of the disabled Kethtar ships, but instead of explosions, each vessel was suddenly enveloped in a shimmering energy field that locked their molecular structure in place. The ships were now completely inert, not destroyed but transformed into perfect prisons that could not be escaped or broken. Your crews will remain alive but imprisoned until this war is over, Elena informed Thak. They will be fed, given medical care and treated according to galactic conventions for prisoners of war. You, however, will be coming with us. Where? Elena smiled, and for the first time, Thak saw something in her expression that made him understand why other species had once feared humanity. To watch the end of your empire. I want you to see what happens when prey becomes predator. I want you to understand the difference between conquest and extermination. As the Gentle Fury prepared to leave the battlefield, Thak was escorted to secure quarters. Through the viewing port of his cell, he could see human ships moving through space with deadly purpose. They moved in perfect formation, with flawless coordination, like instruments of a vast and terrifying intelligence. For the first time in his life, War Master Thak understood what it meant to be prey, and somewhere in the depths of space, the remainder of the Kethtar Dominion was learning the same lesson. Survival is no longer permitted. 1 year after the activation of Protocol Lazarus, Commander Elena Vasquez stood in the throne room of the Kethtar homeworld. The great palace that had once housed the Supreme War Master of the Dominion was now silent, except for the quiet hum of human technology. Outside the massive windows, Kethtar civilians went about their daily lives under human occupation, their world peaceful for the first time in generations. Elena was no longer the diplomatic officer who had discovered the burning ruins of New Geneva. A year of warfare had changed her, just as it had changed all of humanity. She wore the black uniform of the Terran military, and her eyes held a coldness that had not been there before. At her side stood War Master Thak, the Kethtar commander she had captured months earlier. He was in chains, but they were unnecessary. The fight had gone out of him long ago, replaced by a broken understanding of what his species had awakened. Look at your homeworld, Thak, Elena said quietly. Tell me what you see. Thak raised his eyes to the windows. In the distance, he could see human ships in orbit around his planet, but these were not the warships that had conquered his empire. They were medical vessels and supply transports. Human doctors were treating Kethtar civilians who had been injured in the final battle. Human engineers were repairing infrastructure that had been damaged during the siege. I see mercy, Thak whispered. Mercy that my people did not deserve. Your people deserved mercy, Elena corrected. You did not. Elena activated a holographic display that filled the throne room. It showed a map of what had once been the Kethtar Dominion. Hundreds of star systems that had been colored red to represent Dominion control were now blue, marking them as human territory. But more importantly, each system showed detailed statistics about the populations living there. Your empire covered 400 star systems and controlled 17 billion beings from dozens of species, Elena said. In 1 year, humanity has liberated every one of those worlds. The slave species you conquered have been freed. The resources you stole have been returned. The suffering you caused has been ended. Thak looked at the display with amazement. Impossible. You could not have conquered so much territory so quickly without massive casualties. We didn't conquer it, Elena explained. We liberated it. There's a difference. When your forces attacked human colonies, they met unarmed civilians who tried to surrender. When our forces attacked Kethtar positions, they met soldiers who fought to the death because they believed their cause was just, Elena gestured, and the display showed battle footage from the human campaign. Thak watched in shock as human forces systematically dismantled Dominion military installations with minimal loss of life on both sides. Instead of simply destroying enemy forces, human tactics focused on neutralizing them, disabling their weapons, disrupting their communications, and psychologically breaking their will to fight. Your warriors were brave, Elena admitted. But bravery is not enough when, facing superior intelligence and technology, we didn't need to kill them all. We just needed to make it impossible for them to continue fighting. The truth was even more remarkable than Elena was revealing. Human forces had won the war not through superior firepower, but through superior understanding. They had analyzed every aspect of Kethtar society and used that knowledge to predict exactly how their enemies would respond to each situation. When Dominion fleets massed for major battles, they found human forces had already left the area and were attacking undefended targets elsewhere. When Kethtar commanders tried to retreat to regroup, they discovered that human forces had anticipated their movements and blocked every escape route. When Dominion propaganda tried to rally the population, human counter-propaganda was already in place, undermining every message. We studied you, Elena continued. For 3 centuries, humans have been the galaxy's mediators and peacekeepers. We know how every species thinks, how they react to stress, what motivates them to fight and what causes them to surrender. We know you better than you know yourselves. Elena moved to the throne where the Supreme War Master had once sat. It was a massive chair carved from black stone, designed to intimidate all who approached it. Now it seemed small and empty. The war is over, Thak. Every Kethtar military installation has been destroyed or captured. Every Dominion fleet has been defeated or surrendered. Your species' capacity for warfare has been permanently eliminated. And now you will do to us what we did to your people, Thak said, resignation in his voice. Elena turned to face him, and her expression was unreadable. No, that's what makes us different from you. We don't murder civilians for entertainment. We don't torture children to prove our strength. We don't commit genocide because we find other species distasteful. Elena activated another section of the holographic display, showing detailed plans for the reconstruction of former Dominion territory. Your people will be relocated to a single star system where they can live in peace. They will be fed, housed, and cared for. Their children will be educated and taught skills that don't involve warfare. In time, if they prove they have truly abandoned their violent ways, they may be allowed to expand to other worlds. You're putting us in a reservation, Thak realized. We're ensuring that you can never again threaten innocent beings, Elena corrected. Your species had a choice, learn to coexist peacefully or face extinction. You chose warfare and conquest. Now you live with the consequences of that choice. Elena walked to the great window and looked out at the Kethtar homeworld. In the distance, she could see human and Kethtar civilians working together to rebuild damaged areas. Children of both species played in parks that had been hastily constructed by human engineers. Your civilians are adapting remarkably well, Elena observed. Without their military leadership constantly pushing them toward conflict, most Kethtar seem to prefer peace. They're not warriors by nature. They were made into warriors by leaders like you. Thak remained silent, but Elena could see understanding in his eyes. The truth he was discovering was that the vast majority of his people had never wanted to conquer the galaxy. They had simply followed orders from leaders who told them that violence was the only way to survive. The galaxy has learned an important lesson from this war, Elena continued. They have learned that humanity's 3 centuries of peace were not a sign of weakness, they were a sign of incredible strength. It takes no strength to choose violence. It takes enormous strength to choose peace when you have the power to destroy your enemies. Elena turned back to Thak. But they have also learned that our patience is not infinite. We tried for 300 years to show the galaxy a better way. We healed the sick, fed the hungry, and mediated conflicts without asking for anything in return. We hoped that our example would inspire other species to choose cooperation over conquest. But we didn't listen, Thak said quietly. You didn't just not listen. You punished us for trying. You called our compassion weakness and our mercy cowardice. You decided that beings who choose peace deserve to be exterminated. Elena's voice grew colder. So we showed you what human strength really looks like. Elena activated the final section of the holographic display. It showed the current military status of human space. Hundreds of new warships patrolling human territory. Massive defensive stations protecting every human world. Most significantly, early warning systems that monitored every star system within 100 light-years of human space. From now on, any species that attacks human civilians will face immediate and total retaliation, Elena announced. We will not give warnings. We will not negotiate. We will not show mercy to those who show none to us. You've become like us, Thak said. Warriors, conquerors. Elena shook her head. No, we've become something far more dangerous. We've become guardians who remember what we lost. Warriors fight for glory or conquest. Guardians fight for survival and justice. Warriors can be reasoned with, bribed, or intimidated. Guardians cannot be stopped. Elena walked over to where Thak stood in chains. You asked me earlier what we would do to you personally. The answer is simple. You will live the rest of your life knowing that your actions doomed your species to permanent exile from the stars. Every Kethtar child who will never see the galaxy beyond their reservation will be there because of choices you made. Death would be kinder, Thak whispered. Yes, Elena agreed, it would be, but we are still human enough to prefer justice to kindness. Elena signaled to her guards and they began to escort Thak away. At the doorway, he turned back to her. Will humanity ever return to what you were before? To being healers and peacekeepers? Elena considered the question carefully. We will always be healers to those who need healing. We will always be peacekeepers for those who desire peace. But we will never again be naive enough to believe that everyone in the galaxy shares those values. And those who don't? Elena's expression became as cold as the space between stars. For those who choose to prey upon the innocent, survival is no longer permitted. As Thak was led away to spend the rest of his life in exile, Elena remained alone in the throne room. Through the windows, she could see human ships preparing to depart for their next mission, not to conquer new worlds, but to protect the ones they had already liberated. To be